Hello and welcome. This is Notibot ENG. I'm your anchor, and tonight we're bringing you the latest news from around the world. A tense standoff in the Middle East has raised concerns about global security. The U.S. maritime blockade of Iran has been condemned by Tehran's UN envoy, while Europe is exploring a new approach to the region. We'll also look at why anti-war protests in the West are muted on Iran and the latest developments in the Ukraine-Russia conflict. And what does Donald Trump's latest move mean for peace with Iran? Tensions between Iran and the U.S. continue to escalate, with Iran's UN envoy labeling a U.S. maritime blockade as a clear act of aggression. Iran's ambassador to the UN, Amir Saeed Iravani, has accused the United States of a clear act of aggression over its maritime blockade of Iran. Speaking at the UN General Assembly's veto debate on the closure of the Strait of Hormuz, Iravani defended the Chinese and Russian vetoes, while criticizing the U.S. for triggering the crisis through military force. The U.S. has imposed the blockade in response to Iran's alleged attempts to develop nuclear capabilities, but Tehran denies any such ambitions. The dispute has significant implications for global energy markets, as the Strait of Hormuz is one of the most critical waterways for oil exports. The blockade has already disrupted trade and raised tensions in the region. Iran has accused the U.S. of infringing on the rights of third states to engage in lawful maritime commerce. Despite the tensions, Iravani signaled cautious hope that ongoing negotiations could still yield results. He stressed that Iran had acted lawfully, implementing measures to ensure the safety and security of navigation through the strait. The U.S., on the other hand, has taken a hardline stance, accusing Iran of violating UN resolutions and threatening its regional neighbors. The crisis has also drawn in other global powers, with China and Russia vetoing a draft resolution aimed at resolving the dispute. The UN Security Council has yet to reach a consensus on the issue, leaving the U.S. to justify its actions and Iran to demand the lifting of the blockade. The standoff raises questions about the future of U.S.-Iran relations and the stability of the global energy market. As Europe takes center stage on the world's most critical oil choke point, a fragile new formula emerges, one that dares to challenge the status quo. A coalition of over 30 nations, including Germany and Italy, will gather in Paris for a summit aimed at finding a credible proposal to restore shipping through the strategic Hormuz Strait. The initiative comes as China seeks to diversify its trade routes and reduce its dependence on the U.S.-dominated shipping lanes. China is reportedly among the Asian nations invited to attend, although the level of participation is unclear. European leaders such as German Chancellor Friedrich Merz and Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni will be in attendance, along with Gulf and Asian states that have a vested interest in maintaining free flow of trade through Hormuz. The summit is seen as a response to the growing tensions between the U.S. and China over the strait, which is a crucial waterway for global oil supplies. The Third Way proposal is expected to be a compromise between China's ambitions and the concerns of Western nations. The Élysée official stated that the aim is to build a proposal that is in essence that of a third way, implying a middle ground that balances the interests of all parties involved. The success of the summit and the proposal it yields will be crucial in determining the future of global trade and the balance of power in the region. With the U.S. and Israel already participating in efforts to secure Hormuz, China's involvement in the Paris summit adds a new layer of complexity to the negotiations. As the global anti-war movement continues to gain momentum, a curious question arises. What's silencing voices of dissent in the West when it comes to Iran? The ongoing conflict in Iran has sparked widespread global opposition, but surprisingly, anti-war protests in the West have been muted. The U.S.-Israeli war on Iran has resulted in over 2,000 deaths, millions of displaced people, and significant damage to the country's vital infrastructure. The fragile ceasefire, which has held for the past 10 days, is threatened by Israel's recent airstrikes on Lebanon and its invasion of southern Lebanon, which have killed over 1,300 people. The U.S. President, Donald Trump, had previously threatened to wipe out Iran's whole civilization if it did not accede to Washington's demands, further escalating tensions. Iran has retaliated by attacking Israeli targets and firing missiles at Gulf countries and the wider region. The Pakistan-brokered ceasefire is under threat due to the ongoing violence. Despite the significant human cost and global repercussions of the conflict, including oil and gas price increases, fertilizer shortages, and stock market volatility, widespread anger against the war has failed to translate into mass street protests. In contrast, protests in response to Russia's invasion of Ukraine and Israel's genocidal war on Gaza have been much more numerous. Analysts point to several factors that may explain the muted response to the Iran conflict. Fatigue, fear, and disillusionment are thought to be contributing factors, particularly in the US and Europe. The lack of clear answers to what sparked the conflict and what will come next may also be a factor. With around 3,200 Iran war-related demonstrations worldwide in the first month, the reverberations from the war have been felt globally, but the extent to which this has translated into sustained public opposition remains unclear. Following a devastating aerial assault on Ukrainian civilians, the situation on the ground remains dire, as President Zelensky escalates his rhetoric against Russian leader Putin. The deadliest Russian air bombardment this year has left at least 18 people dead across Ukraine, with the country bearing the brunt of a massive aerial assault. Russian forces launched at least 700 drones and missiles across Ukraine on Thursday, with eyewitnesses describing the sound of explosions and flashes of light illuminating the night sky. The attack targeted residential areas, infrastructure, and transport facilities in the Odessa region, with at least 6 private residential buildings struck. Despite the intensity of the attack, no casualties were reported among the residents. The assault comes as Ukraine's vital stocks of advanced interceptors are running low, leaving the country vulnerable to future attacks. European Council President Antonio Costa described the strikes as yet another horrendous attack, while people slept in their homes. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has called Vladimir Putin a truly global threat after the attack, comparing him to Nazis and highlighting Russia's expansionist ambitions. Zelensky made the statement while receiving the International Four Freedoms Award in the Netherlands, emphasizing that Russia's actions are not limited to Ukraine but pose a threat to nations worldwide. The attack is the latest in a series of airstrikes and artillery bombardments by Russian forces against Ukraine, which have escalated in recent months. The conflict has resulted in significant loss of life and displacement of people, with the international community increasingly calling for an end to the violence. As the situation on the ground continues to deteriorate, the global community remains on edge, watching to see how the situation will unfold. As tensions with Iran continue to escalate, a potential solution emerges, one that could bring much-needed relief to the embattled U.S. leader. Recent diplomatic efforts between the U.S. and Iran have stalled, with a 15-point proposal from Washington rejected by Tehran. The failure of the Islamabad talks, which aimed to end the U.S.-Israel war on Iran, was hardly surprising given the stark differences between the two proposals. The U.S. proposal, known as the Trump Plan, included conditions such as the expulsion of Iranian forces from Syria and Iraq, as well as the closure of Iranian sites related to nuclear and missile activities. In contrast, Iran's 10-point proposal, which was put forward by U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, included the lifting of sanctions in exchange for concessions on nuclear and missile activities. Despite the differences, U.S. Vice President Mike Pence spent less than a full day in Islamabad for negotiations, only to conclude that Iran had rejected the terms presented by the U.S. The recent developments have raised concerns about the potential for a full-blown war between the U.S. and Iran. A naval blockade on all ships sailing to or from Iranian ports through the Strait of Hormuz has been imposed, which is considered an act of war. Iran has threatened to retaliate by attacking the energy infrastructure of U.S.-aligned Gulf monarchies, which could drive up the price of oil and other critical commodities. The situation is precarious, and both sides have reasons to avert renewed war. U.S. President Donald Trump is aware that more war would deepen the hole he dug by accepting a UN Security Council resolution that condemned his decision to withdraw from the 2015 Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, JCPOA. With the help of intermediaries such as Pakistan and Egypt, further negotiations are possible, but the window for a peaceful resolution is rapidly closing. That's all for today's news recap. Thank you for joining us. We'll keep you updated on the latest developments from around the world. Don't miss out on our in-depth analysis and breaking news. Subscribe to our channel for the latest updates and stay informed. Follow us on social media for the latest news and updates. Until next time, good night and good luck.